guys, so I'm going to explain to you real quickly here how to fill out your bracket for the NCAA tournament. Those of you that have me for Complit would know that we have brackets just like this when we do our typing tournament. This bracket has 64 teams in it, really a few extra here because there's what we call the play-in games, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it's a tournament that has rankings here for the college basketball teams. You can see on the side. They're always paired up to add up to 17 in this first round here. So 1 and 16, 8 and 9, 5 and 12, 4 and 13. Those numbers are how good these teams are considered to be. There's 4 regions, the South, the East, the West, and the Midwest. So within each region, there's teams numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up through 16. Number 1 is considered the best. Number 16 is considered the worst out of that bracket, but they're all the 64 best teams in all of college basketball, so they're all quite good teams. So one way you guys can pick is by simply looking at their numbers here, and they call it higher, but we would kind of think of it as a lower number in math. That quote unquote a higher seed is normally the one that you think would be better. So 1 versus 16, you would think a 1 is going to win. I'll tell you guys, in the history of the NCAA tournament, so far a 16 has never beaten a number 1 seed. Everything else has been upset. So like a 15 has beaten a 2, and a 14 has beaten a 3, and so on. But a 16 has never beaten a 1. So if you know nothing about college basketball, I would at least recommend in that first round here, moving from here to here, that you probably pick those number 1 seeds to move on. Other than that, picking the teams, you guys can kind of pick how you want to choose who's going to win and who's going to lose. You can pick based off the name. You can pick based off the mascot. I'll show you in a minute here on the CBS website, where if you want to read up on the teams and see like what their record is, who's predicted to win. There's some information you can get there if you really want to get down deep into it. You can see their mascots, like my 8-year-old son likes to pick just based on the mascots. But you don't need to have any knowledge about college basketball. You're not going to be graded in terms of how well you do picking these teams. Eventually what we'll do is we'll use this bracket to do some fraction, decimal, and percent calculations once the entire tournament is over, which if you look here, the championship game isn't until April 2nd. So you've got a while till that happens, but we have to fill these out now because games start on Thursday, and really these play-in games start tomorrow. So we need to figure this out now so that we have everything filled out ahead of time. There will be some prizes for people, though, that do the best in each of your periods. So you have a little bit of an incentive there to do better and try to do well in your picks here. So how do I fill out my bracket? Well, again, those of you that have seen me do it in a typing tournament, you can see these 2 lines here come together to make this line. So that means between these 2 teams, whoever you think is going to win, you're going to write on this next line here. So like I said, I really recommend picking the number 1 teams for each of those 1 versus 16. So here in the South, I'm going to pick Virginia. Over here in the West Division, I'm going to pick Xavier. You guys are welcome to use abbreviations as long as you can tell what those abbreviations are, and I can too. Over here, I'm going to pick Kansas. Up here in the East, I'm going to pick Villanova. They're commonly known as Nova, so I'm going to abbreviate it to that. Okay. Now, as I move down here in the South bracket, I can see number 8 and number 9 are Creighton and Kansas State. I have to admit, the Hawkeyes have not been very good this year, so I have hardly watched any college basketball, so I don't know anything about what I'm doing this year. Normally, I have a pretty good idea of what's going on with these college teams this year. I don't know, so I wouldn't take my picks as maybe necessarily being the best ones. When it's 8 versus 9, it's really kind of what we call a coin toss. They're very evenly matched, at least when the committee picked their seeds here. So kind of up to you. This is definitely one where you might want to do some research on CBS.com. So Creighton versus Kansas State. I just happen to like Creighton, so I'm going to pick them. Okay. Then we've got Kentucky versus Davidson. 5 and 12 is like a common upset pick. A lot of times people pick 12s to beat 5s. That's called an upset when the lower seed beats a higher seed. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Davidson. I'm going to pick an upset there. And then I've got Arizona versus Buffalo. I'm going to pick Arizona. I'm going to try to fill out my whole South bracket here just so you guys can see how I keep going further down the line here. So then Miami, Florida versus Loyola. Since I'm from Chicago, I'm going to pick an upset there and pick Loyola. Tennessee versus Wright State. I'm going to pick Tennessee. Nevada versus Texas. I'm going to pick Nevada. And then Cincinnati versus Georgia State. I'm going to pick Cincinnati. Okay, and then this is actually a new bracket there. we look at these ones, now the way I get this name of a team here is by looking at these two teams, because if you can see these two lines connect to here. So Virginia versus Creighton, I'm going to say Virginia wins. Davidson versus Arizona, I'm going to say Arizona wins. Loyola versus Tennessee, I'm going to say Tennessee wins. And Nevada versus Cincinnati, I'm going to pick an upset there and say that Nevada wins. Because again, I'm looking back at their original seed, so I know this was a 7 and this was a 2. So that's why it's an upset. And then I'm going to pick Virginia. Oops, missed the eye there. To beat Arizona. I'm going to pick Tennessee to beat Nevada. And then I'm going to have Virginia winning here. Now, when you get down to here, this is called the Final Four, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 teams. So let's say after filling out this entire bracket, I'm not going to do the whole thing to bore you guys, but let's say North Carolina, UNC, let's say I pick them to beat everybody else within that bracket. Over here, let's say it's Michigan State. And then up in the East bracket, we'll say Nova. So between these two teams, like Villanova and Michigan State, who I think is going to win between those two, I would write right here. Between these two teams, who I think is going to win, Virginia and North Carolina, I would write here. And then my ultimate champion, so these two teams would be in the championship game on April 2nd, I would write here. Now, I'm not saying that's actually how my bracket's going to play out. I haven't actually filled out my bracket yet, but just to give you guys an example, okay? These play-in games down here. So there's a few games that happen really before we consider the first tournament to start. I'm going to highlight for you where they are. Here's one of them. That highlighter's kind of light. Let's see. Here's another one. And then over here is one. And here's the other one. Okay. So those ones I highlighted in that light green. The winners of these games here will play against that number 1 team here, or here, the number 16, here the number 16, here the number 1 team. So like I said, these two, you probably were going to pick the number 1 team anyway, because the 16's never beaten a number 1, and they already just had to play a game 2 days before this. But these ones, the 6 versus 11, you may think, oh, you know what, okay, this is Florida versus, and then they had to abbreviate here, so that's St. Bonaventure versus UCLA. So you could say, well, you know what, I think UCLA is going to win here, and then I think they're going to win again here against Florida. You can do that. So you can pick these teams. You just have to decide between these two who you think is going to win. Same thing here. So you've got TCU is going to go up against the winner of these two, either Arizona State or Syracuse. So like if you think Syracuse is going to win, then you can like circle Syracuse here, and then if you think they're going to win again versus TCU, then you could fill them in there. It's not unheard of that these play-in teams, the 11 ones, have gone on to win a game or 2 in the tournament. So it's not a completely like ridiculous pick to pick one or both of those to win their first round in the real tournament. So that's how you fill out your bracket. If you want to do some more research, let me switch here to the internet. I'll include a link to this on my website. But on CBSSports.com, or you probably go to ESPN too, I'm sure different websites have slightly different information, but same idea. But on CBS, this is like a fillable bracket for online. If you go out to those fillable brackets, then if I click on the little eye here next to each game, it's kind of hard to see, it's pretty light on the website here, but if you click on that, it gives you a matchup analysis. This is what my 8-year-old likes to look like at Gavin. He just likes to look at the 2 mascots and go, I like that dog, so I think it's going to beat the Swords, or that's how he picks it. And that's how you could pick it too. Other things that you'd want to look at, their record. This is wins, this is losses. So Virginia's 131 and only lost 2. UMBC's 124 and lost 10. And then this is their record within their conference. So they're 12-4 in their conference. They were second. Virginia was 17-1 and first in the ACC. And then they give you, okay, their last 5 games, their record versus the top 25 ranked teams. User picks, so on CBS.com, 1% of people are picking UMBC to win, 99% are picking Virginia. You can read up on the teams, like their strengths and weaknesses. And then this also gives you some stats. So their strength of schedule, like how hard were the teams they played against, points per game,
free throw percentage, just some things to look at, their key players, all sorts of cool stuff to look at. So you can get as in-depth to this or not as you want. If you go ahead and kind of fake fill out your bracket on here and then just copy it on your paper copy, then like as you go, let's say I pick Virginia and Creighton like I did in my fake one, then now as I fill this out, when I click this eye, it will then give me the information of Virginia up against Creighton. But you can only get that information if you click and fill it out here. Otherwise, you'd only be able to get the information on these first round matchups that they already have set. So if you want to keep getting info, fill it the bracket online and then also fill it out in front of you. If you guys have any questions, let me know. You're going to fill this out during park today with your homeroom park testing teacher, and then they're going to turn these in to me. If you want extra days to fill this out, let me know. That would be fine. You have until Thursday, really, to get it done because that's when the official games start.